Hey guys, my name is Christian. Welcome to Mix It and Fix It. Today I thought that I'll go through how I mix a barebone track consisting of piano and vocals in a few simple steps. But let's start off by listening to the finished result.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb, a peak so high above the sky where the air is clear, where I can breathe, where I can be free, above the sky, above the sky, where I am free again, where I can finally breathe again.
Alright, so I think it goes without saying, but the kind of pre-stage to all of this is just to listen to the track and see what's going on. In this case, I know the track very well because I produced and recorded it. It consists of a piano track here, a lead vocal split into the verse and chorus, and then I have a bunch of harmonies, which I won't go through here today. I think I'll do that in a separate episode. So the first stage when it comes to actual processing is to add a simple basic EQ. And in this case, I'm just using the stock EQ of ProTools. It works great. But let's listen to what the raw vocals sound like, and then I'll add the EQ as we go along.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. One day I'll find another mountain to climb.
Of course, equalization is very source dependent, but in this case, the vocal sounds very mix ready from the get-go. So I just added a high pass filter, which I think that you can always do on vocals, say around 80 to 100 Hertz. In this case, I removed some high bass and some low mid mud just to open up the vocals. So the next stage to all of this is to work with the dynamics. And the very first step is that I use the clip gain function in Pro Tools. And all DAWs has a similar function. And this is a way to just gain stage the raw wave file. So we can, add gain to the lower gain parts and also remove some of the louder dynamics. And this is just a way to prepare for the compressors that we are going to add next. The first actual compressor that we're going to add is the MV2 from Waves. And this is a great, very subtle compressor that doesn't add any character to the vocals. This can also be used as an outward compressor. So we are going to compress the lower dynamics as well as clamping down on the louder peaks. So let's see what that does to the vocals.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. One day I'll find another mountain to climb.
So it works great, and I tend to use it around 1 dB, 1.5 dB tops, and this is just a way to smooth out the dynamics. And then the next plugin that I usually add is Vocal Rider, and I tend to use this very subtle as well at around 0.5 dBs plus minus, and this is a great way to ride the vocals. So it won't compress the vocals, it will only ride the volume within the plugin. So let's see what that does to the vocals.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. One day I'll find another mountain to climb.
Alright, so on the louder parts there, it's ducking down on the volume, so it will smooth out the vocals even further. Then the next stage when it comes to dynamics is to add an actual compressor. And I'm using the old R-Comp from Waves, which is great because it doesn't add any character. It's just a subtle, super subtle compressor. And I tend to use it at a very low ratio. The higher the ratio, the more apparent the compression will be. So I have it around 2.1 ratio here. So let's see what that does to the vocals.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. One day I'll find another mountain to climb.
Alright, so it seems to be working about 3 dBs on the louder parts, which seems to, even out the vocals even further. So one thing that is somewhere in between this, which you might not have to use, but once you start to processing the vocals with EQ and dynamics, some S's can become a little bit more apparent, and sometimes you have to address that with a simple de-esser. So let's see what that does on the part here.
A peak so high above the sky where the air is clear. A peak so high above the sky where the air is clear.
So it works great. It's just a way to handle that sibilance. And then I tend to work in steps when I mix vocals. I don't like to clamp down on a compressor or do too much with one EQ. I rather add another instance and work with small increments to get to that finished mix result. So let's see what this EQ does with the piano playing with the vocals.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. A peak so high above the sky where the air is clear. Where I can breathe, where I can be free. Above the sky. Above the sky.
Alright, so just some cuts in the high bass and low mids. Of course, the vocals is the most important part of the mixing process or the track, but just cutting some in the low mids can really open up the track and start to glue things together, which I think this is the case with this small EQ adjustment. So the next step here is to send all of these tracks to a bus and add saturation. Saturation is a great way to add some harmonics. It can shave off transient tops and so, and it just usually shave off that kind of digital feel to it. But in this case, with an acoustic track, you don't want to overdo it because at least I don't want to have some audible distortion. I just want it to saturate to glue things together. So let's see what this plugin called Cassiopeia does to the track, which is a super subtle saturation plugin.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. A peak so high above the sky where the air is clear. Where I can breathe, where I can be free. Above the sky. Above the sky.
So super subtle, but you can kind of hear that it rounds off the top end and just makes it glue a little bit better to the vocals. So the next step that I tend to use when it comes to saturation is to add a tape plugin, and I really enjoy the A800 from UAD. It doesn't have too much of that annoying top end or that super low end thump that some tape plugins have, so it's very subtle in the way it compresses the signal. So keep an eye out for the metering here. The more the metering is moving, the more compression and saturation and color you add to the signal. So I tend to keep it fairly low here with the gain so I don't overly compress or saturate the vocal. So let's see what that does with the vocal track here.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb. A peak so high above the sky where the air is clear. Where I can breathe, where I can be free. Above the sky. Above the sky.
Alright, so it just smooths out the vocals and in my opinion just makes it sound a little bit warmer and a little bit better. So the very next step here is to start to add some actual FX processing. And I tend to use a reverb that mimics a room because I think that that creates some depth to the vocals and the track. And in this case, I'm using the Valhalla Vintage Verb at around 1.2 seconds of decay. Pre-delay is used to keep the vocals clear and not make them too washed out. A low cut filter because I don't want that low end in the reverb, and also a high cut because I don't want that kind of sizzling highs in the reverb bleeding through. So let's see what that does to the vocal track here.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb, a peak so high above the sky where the air is clear, where I can breathe, where I can be free, above the sky, above the sky.
So it just starts to create some depth to the track and make it glue together with the piano. So I think in this case, with a track like this could be enough when it comes to FX. You don't have to have that super long reverb if you don't like it. I mean, it's really subjective and it's more about what you want to do with the track. But I have one last plugin that I tend to always use, and that is the CLA Vocal. I think the compression function of the plugin works great. The wall function has some sort of compressor / limiter. It just really, glues things together, keeps the vocal in place. I think the FX sounds great. The reverb is good. The large chamber sounds really good. The delays and pitch function works equally as well. So it's just a very good plugin to strap on as a last kind of keep it together finalizing the vocal sound. So let's see what that does to the vocals.
One day I'll find another mountain to climb, a peak so high above the sky where the air is clear, where I can breathe, where I can be free, above the sky, above the sky.
So it just keeps the vocals in place, and I think that we're closing in on the finalized result here. All right, so one final thing that I want to address here is that I split up the track in the verse and chorus, and this is just to keep the session clean. As you can see here on the chorus, this is way louder than the verse later on. This means that the compressor will work harder. Sometimes that works great for the track, but sometimes you just want to address that and perhaps make minor adjustments on the compressor or the EQ. In this case, we also have a bunch of harmonies playing, which will of course affect the lead vocals as well. So in short, we've been using EQ to clean up the track and just give it some sculpting. We've been using dynamic processing in terms of clip gain, the MV2, vocal rider, and our compressor. Very clean, very subtle. Then we use some saturation in terms of Cassiopeia and a tape plugin to add those harmonics and give it some sculpting, some smooth compression. And at last, we added some some reverb and the CLA vocal plugin to really keep the vocals in place and just glue everything together. So I think this is a great starting point. Keep it subtle, keep it clean, and I'm sure that you will get a great sounding mix. All right, guys, that's really it for today's episode. If you enjoy this kind of content, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you guys around.